Hello everybody and welcome back to Imagination Productions. Today I'm here to talk to you about Avatar yet again. Today I will be talking about my theory of how Yakone learned bloodbending. Before I begin, I want to say that this is just my theory. This may be wrong or may be correct. We don't know because the official Avatar makers never said how he learned bloodbending. Just as a warning, this video will be a bit of a darker theory than most of my videos. So now that you've been warned, let's get into it. My theory is that Hama is the one who taught Yakone bloodbending. I know what you're all going to say, that can't be right. She was locked away and died in prison. Well, that is where my theory begins. We never got confirmation that she actually stayed in prison her whole life, or hell, even if she got to prison and didn't bloodbend the officers taking her into prison. So this is where my theory really begins. When the officers decided to take her to prison after she was arrested for bloodbending, after found out by Katara, Aang, Sokka, and Toph, she actually bloodbent the officers to actually get away, and she fled to a small village in the Northern Water Tribe and stayed there for a few years. She noticed herself getting weaker and weaker as the years went on. She wanted to make sure that even when she died, bloodbending would still be around. So she wanted to find another person to teach, since she knew that Katara would never continue teaching it and bloodbending would obviously die with her. Her only problem was that there was no suitable person for her to teach. Because of this, she tried to find a way to live longer, and she did. She found a way to bend her own blood to keep her alive. You may be wondering how that could keep her alive. Well, the reason that most people die of old age is that their heart gives out and stops beating. With her blood bending, she was able to pump the blood through her own body, which would keep her alive. She spent a few weeks trying to perfect the art, and at the end it saved her from death. A few years passed and she saw a young man in the village who had a real knack for waterbending. This boy would have been no older than 14 years old. She took one look and she knew that this was the one she had to teach. She walked up to him and said, "Wow, you're really good at that waterbending technique," to try and gain the boy's trust. "Thanks," said the boy back to her. "What's your name, young man?" asked Hama. "My name's Yakone," said the little boy. "Well, Yakone, would you like me to show you some very advanced waterbending?" "Yeah," yelled Yakone back to her. Hama then told him to follow her back to her house. When they got to her house, she told him her famous line, "Where there is life, there is water." She then proceeded to bloodbend a polar bear rat, showing to Yakone bloodbending for the first time. He stared in amazement, not blinking once as she made the rat move along the shelf. "Well, what do you think?" she said to him. "Please show me how to do that," yelled Yakone. At those words, she was happy for the first time in years, and said to the boy, "Yes." For a month, she would secretly teach him how to bloodbend, away from everyone else. During those weeks, she watched him and realized that he had a dark side, and would be willing to bloodbend a human. One night, she took him away from the village, along with one more person. When they were a good ways away from the village, she showed Yakone how to bloodbend a human. She made the person flail around on the floor, completely in control, then looked at Yakone and said, "Your turn." He didn't hesitate for a moment. He had watched Hama, memorized her form and everything. He took his stance, looked into the terrified eyes of the woman. It bloodbent her. He made her flail around, walk around, and at the end, she died. At that moment, Hama knew he had finished his training and was now her equal. An hour before daybreak, they returned to the village, leaving the body to be covered in snow. Yakone snuck back into his house, and Hama went back to her house. When morning came, a group of hunters came back from the village after many days of being out hunting. Everyone gathered in the middle of the village. Hama went to see what was going on, but when she got there, she saw the body of the person Yakone had killed. The hunters were yelling out, saying things like, "Who did this?" Everyone stared at the dead body until one person said something. "It was her," yelled Yakone, pointing at Hama. "She's a bloodbender too. That's how she killed her." Everyone was shaken by the news, except for the hunters, who grabbed her and two that went to the boy. "How do you know this?" asked one of the hunters. "Because she wanted to teach me bloodbending," Yakone said. Hama was furious. When she saw the hunters about to take her away, just like all those years ago, when the first hunter touched her, she bloodbent him, and then the rest of the village, and knocked them all out, except for one person, Yakone. Yakone had used a defensive strategy she taught him to stop her from bending. Yakone then bloodbent her. While this happened, she was unable to bend her own blood to keep her alive. He bloodbent her for a good 2 minutes, and then she died. He used bloodbending to lift her and hide her deep in the snow away from the village where no one would ever find her body. He returned to the village just in time for everyone to wake back up. No one knew what he had just did and assumed that she ran away into the snow somewhere. They sent out a search party for her to look for her, to make sure she was dead, but eventually gave up and assumed she died in a snowstorm. Yakone continued to secretly practice bloodbending, and one day left the village and went to Republic City. So that leads into what we already know about him. If you want to see more about his life, check out my last video on the history of bloodbending. Thanks for watching. Comment down below what you thought of my theory. Did you like it, or do you think it could be improved on? Let me know in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.